going to get cracking. So as I say, if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A. I'm not going to be answering questions as I go, mainly because an hour isn't a long time, and I'm trying to kind of pack in as much stuff as I can. Yeah, I'm going to kind of set aside 10 minutes at the end to kind of go through any questions, maybe try some stuff out. Okay, so hopefully, and I'm sure someone will tell me if you can't see that, but you can see the interface of Unreal Engine 5. Now, Unreal Engine 5 only recently came out. It's actually still in its kind of early access. So there's lots of things in here that are still works in progress. And even kind of playing around with it over the last couple of days to kind of like play around with kind of what I would be doing today. There's a few bugs, and I'll share some of those with you, some of the things that don't quite work the way they should, but hopefully I'll create something fun. So the point of today was really just to showcase all the things that you can do with Unreal to create a cinematic using free assets. Okay, so Unreal and Epic Games have released over the last few years a massive library of free content, and so really there's no excuse for you to not try this stuff out. The map that I'm using here is just a medieval map. That's one of the free ones you can download. And what I tend to do, I'll just show you this, is I've got the Epic Games marketplace, and every month, if you didn't know this already, Epic give away content specifically that's free for that month. And you'll notice if I just click on that, I tend to just download these, or not download them, purchase them every month, because what happens is they will change next month and you don't lose them. You end up with a massive library of just content that you can kind of pull and drag in to your scenes and to do whatever you want with. I haven't actually even opened any of these yet. Sometimes there's some cool stuff. So what I end up with is a kind of a massive, first of all, that's just the medieval ones. If I just get rid of that, you can just see that I've just got tons and tons and tons and tons of content that I've either purchased, or perhaps it's just free stuff that I've collated over kind of lots of time here. So yeah, as I say, the list keeps on going on. We're on M. Anyway, so hopefully you get the idea. So again, there's tons of really cool content that you can kind of add here. If you're getting content into Unreal Engine 5, the way of doing that at the moment is a bit different. So for example, this environment that I've currently got in Unreal Engine 5, you don't have the option to just kind of load it straight into the engine. What you end up having to do is you load it into one of the Unreal Engine 4 engine builds. So currently on this computer, I've got Unreal 4.26. And then what you're able to do is then migrate that content into a Unreal Engine 5 project. And it's just because of how they're set up. If I could add this to project, you'll notice it's only picking up my Unreal Engine 4 project. I can't just add it to Unreal Engine 5. But anyway, there's a roundabout way of doing that, but it's pretty cool once it's there, because as you can see, I'm just not going to add that. And cool. So as I say, I've got this medieval kind of environment here, this dungeon, and it's quite big. There's lots of stuff going on. It's got a whole upstairs area. I've been thinking last day or so, like what I'd actually be doing. And I thought, what better than, I forget where I was, over here, yeah. What better to perhaps create kind of like a dramatic sequence where a knight comes across crypt and a monster in the crypt. I'm already starting to find plot holes in that idea. If you look at the size of the crypt, it's very tiny compared to this massive creature. Yeah, but we'll go with it for now, just because, again, hopefully what you get from this is kind of just the principles of what we're doing here. So these characters of this beast and of this knight, these are free characters that you can download from Mixamo. So I'll just show you Mixamo. And this is where I'm actually going to be using the mocap data as well, because Mixamo is completely free. You just have to have a Adobe account, and you can just go to mixamo.com. And if I was to go through the characters here, there is a kind of massive library of different characters. Some of the characters here have different variations. For example, this knight that I was looking at, I might not find it now. I'm sure I will. He comes in two different versions, one with a sword and shield and one without. But I wanted him to have a sword and shield. And if I just type in prop, because I remember that's what he had in his name, there he is. So what I can do is I can see him there, and when I click on animations, I get a massive library of animations that I can use. If I turn off prop there, and if I was to just hip hop dancing, why not? Let's see him do some funky moves. It's a bit dangerous. He's kind of cutting off his arm there. You know, but you get kind of the idea. There's some quite interesting things that you can do. With him having a shield, obviously it does limit his movement. And actually, there's loads. If I was to type in sword here, there's lots of animations here which are just for characters with swords and shields. So if I was to grab run, there we go, sword and shield run. He's running, and it kind of looks, again, considering that I haven't had to do anything to kind of get this is completely free content here. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we can start to kind of like bring these into Unreal to drive the characters and drive some sort of narrative. I was thinking about what the narrative would be, and I'm just going to keep it simple. Again, we don't have a massive amount of time. I'm going to try and make this look as pretty as possible. So as I say, I haven't got a plan, and my idea was that I was going to try and create something that would only take less than an hour to do, and you could do only using free content, so free marketplace content and things like that. So with that in mind, I'm going to make a quick storyboard, and for that I'm going to use Paint, MS Paint, because it's free, unless you have, hopefully you have like a free version of this. So as I say, I'm just going to create a little plan. It's always nice to have a plan. Just create some boxes here. Yeah, that's not quite the same size. I doubt I'll do more than like 6 shots. We'll see how it goes. Something like that, fine. And my brush, does that work? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna make this really simple. So I'm just gonna have maybe an establishing shot of, I'm just gonna call this my establishing shot, and I'm gonna make this of like a torch or something. So that's my torch. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. And then I want to introduce the beast first. I think that's what I'm going to do. So maybe a side shot of him. He's kind of like got his antlers and stuff. Something with kind of like really kind of deep in focus. He's kind of facing this way. And then perhaps a shot of him kind of behind. I don't like the framing of that. Maybe he'd be a bit smaller than that. Maybe something. I'm going to draw these big antlers. He seems to have these antlers. So the action in this shot is that the knight, you're going to see like the knight come into the shot, like an over the shoulder idea. And we're going to do a pull focus from the creature to the knight. So we're going to go this way, from the creature being in focus to the knight being in focus, and then back to the creature. The creature's going to turn around. So that's going to be, and then what could the next shot be? Maybe we see the knight starts to run. This could be quite a low shot. So maybe, what color did I use for the knight? So again, knight is going to be quite a low shot, quite low to the ground, kind of looking up at him. Again, I'm doing a super rough. And then I think the last shot, so yeah, probably about 5 shots, will be of the monster kind of here with these nice antlers, kind of standing kind of here, and then the knights running into the shot, and then kind of with his sword and shield, and they're being kind of like, so running into the shot, and then this being kind of this attack, and then we'll cut to black at the end. So okay, yeah, so we won't see the impact, we won't see whether he kills the beast or anything like that, but something like that. So let's get cracking. So there's a few animations in this. I'm thinking a few idols. So from the beginning here, I have an idol of, so there'll be idol. What else do I need? I need a walk for the knight. So this will be a idol and then a 180 turn. So just planning kind of what mocap I'm going to need. And this will just be the knight. So let's do an idle. I can spell idle correctly. I can. Let's do that again. And a run. Maybe this is where we see the start of the run. And then this one would be a run and an idle and an attack. Okay, so that's kind of like the plan there. So I'm going to start with the first kind of proper shot with the character, which is an idol with the beast. So I'm just going to move my tablet out the way, just so I'm not trying to draw on that anymore. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'll find that character again. It was the one, this one here. And I'm just going to just type it in the animations idle. Just something nice and simple. So zooming on him again. Something like that. That seems cool. I like it. So I established that my character, again going back to my storyboard, I was going to be looking at this side of him, so kind of his left. He's currently standing. If we were having the camera from that side, he'd have his back to the camera, try to avoid that. I've got an option here to mirror pose, so I can just do that. That's more like it. That's cool. He doesn't have antlers, he has a broken horn. Okay, never mind. So I'm going to download it. So what am I actually downloading? For the first time that you download any of these characters, you want to download the actual model itself. The way you can do that is that you have to go to just the T-pose. So if you just go T-pose, and then that is kind of the default model. It comes with the skin, you get the textures, and you also get the skeleton. So the skeleton you can see inside. So what's happening when we are downloading the animation, I'm just going to grab that idle again, is that we don't need the skin again. We only need the skeleton, because what we're going to do in Unreal is you just make the skeleton, the animated skeleton, drive the T-pose skeleton that we already have. So if I was to, I can't remember which idol I chose. Where's this one? And mirrored it. Cool. So we're going to download this. So when it says here with skin, it's asking whether you want the geometry as well. And I don't, so I'm just going to take that out. Frame reduction, I don't need anything like that. And so I'm just going to hit download. So that'll go into my downloads there. Cool. So coming into Unreal now, I'm not going to worry about the knight for now. So I'm just going to move him out of the shot. Sorry, middle mouse button sometimes is a bit terrible. Because he doesn't exist yet. He's going to be just standing in the doorway. So yeah, I'm just going to move them over there. So here we are, and he's going to become standing over the crypt. That's what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm just going to move him to the right place. rotate him, just do a full 180. So facing the opposite direction. Cool. So what we're going to do is I need to bring in that animation now into Unreal. So I'm going to hit Control and Space, which brings up my content drawer. And I like to keep these as organized as possible. So I've got a folder here for the beast and for the knight. So any animations that for the beast, I'm going to keep in here. So I'm just going to create a new folder. And this is going to be called Animations. Perfect. And what I can do now in my downloads, I can just drag and drop that into this. So the first time you do this, it doesn't, whenever you import animation, it will be undecided about where it wants to go sometimes. Usually it will kind of recognize the fact that this character has a skeleton and will just try and match that up. The problem I have here is that I actually have two characters from Mixamo that both have the same, share the same skeleton names. So the first step here is just to decide which one I'm going to attach it to. Am I going to attach it to the knight or onto the creature? So I'm going to attach it to the creature. And import. Okay, so this is going to be here. There he is. If I double click on this, I can see that kind of movement. It's looking okay. So cool. So I'm going to close that. I'm actually going to save all, because he's going to be quite boring. He's not going to be doing much. He's just going to be, his animation, I've decided, is just going to be an idle, and it's the knight that's going to attack him. So cool. So, but you'll notice that now I've imported that animation. It's not on the creature. There's a few ways of doing this. If it was, if I just wanted it to kind of get into that pose, I could actually, under the animation tab over here, just get it to use that animation asset that I've imported. And if I was to grab that, you can see it's the only one that's attached to it. And there we are. It's not playing. If I was to push play on the inside of Unreal, it would play through that animation. But I don't want to do that. I actually want to create a cinematic, so maybe a sequence of shots. And for that, I'm going to create a different type of asset in Unreal called it's called a level sequence. And I'm just going to open up my content. I'm just going to do this at my top level. I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to put this cinematic. I think that's spelled correctly. For some reason it looks wrong. But anyway, so inside of this, I'm going to right click, go to the animation options here, and going through these, I've got something here called a level sequence. And this is, I'm going to make this my master sequence. And just to explain what I mean by master sequence, I'm just going to use Paint again for this. I love Paint. I don't, it doesn't do anything. We'll go with that. Let's find an interesting brush. There we go. This is like a fountain pen. So I'm just going to quickly just explain that here. So a level sequence is essentially a timeline. So this would be the start and end. Okay. Cool. Think of a level sequence like an empty box. By default, it's a timeline that contains nothing. But what we can start to do is bring in content. So this beast, for instance, could be put into this, and then I could use, say this is the beast, I could start plugging in animation. The cool thing about this is that I could bring in another animation and play it in the next part, and in the next part, and in the next part. Lots of different animations, and start playing them in order. You're going to see me do that in a second. A really cool thing about level sequences as well is, again, going back to this simple analogy of a box, a level sequence is essentially an empty box, and you can actually fill it with other level sequences. So you end up creating kind of a hierarchy of levels, essentially, which is quite cool. Level sequences, sorry. So what I've created here is my master sequence. I'm going to have, so this is my master sequence. What I'm going to have inside of this is shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4, shot 5. And within these level sequences is where I'm going to start adding the animation. It all makes hopefully more sense once we get to it. So I'm just going to minimize that. So my master sequence, and then I'm going to create another one, and that's going to be my first shot. So I'm going to create a new level sequence. So this one is just going to be called shot underscore. There's lots of different naming conventions. I'm just going to actually go for 0, 1, 0. So shots 10, and that's, I can start creating kind of variations if I want to. I probably won't have time to do too many variations of shots, if any. So what I'm going to do is create 5 more. So a good way of duplicating this is you can hold Control and W. And what that does is it will duplicate it, but also give the option straight away to rename it. So I can just do that again. So Control and W is quite a good way just to get my shots. And one more, because the last one is just a fade to black, which I don't have to have a separate shot. So shot 50. So I'm just going to save all of those, even though they're blank, because it's just a pain to have to keep making them again. Sweet. So shot 1 is going to be, so I'm just going to go into my master sequence. I'm just going to add a track. And as I say, think of opening up a level sequence. You can see here this empty box, there's nothing in it. Actually, I'm not going to do that first. I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to create shot 2 first. So shot 2, here's my empty box. So what I want to do is put him into my empty box. And the way you do that is, the easiest way to do it is you select what you want to put into sequencer, and you just add a track. And you'll get all of these different options here, and it can be a little bit daunting of all the different things you can do. I'm not going to go through all of these. But when you're adding just characters like this, it's really easy. What you can do is just go to Actor to Sequencer. And if I was to look here, I can see that my beast is actually at the top of this list. So whatever you've got selected will always be at the top. Otherwise, we could go through and search for it, but that takes a long time. Cool. So if I go to my animation now, I can go to add this idle. And there he is. Now, if I play through this timeline, you can see that idle playing through. And the cool thing about Mixamo animations as well is that most of them have, well, not every single one, obviously, like the sum of like deaths and things like that. But the idles, the walks, things that are intended to be a cycle are a kind of cycle that you can loop. And it's really easy to make something like this loop. I can just grab the end and just drag it. And you'll notice these little lines through this, and that's where it's repeating. So now for this entire shot, if I was to just hit the spacebar to play, you can just see him playing through that. Cool. So that's shot 2. I'm going to add in a camera. Let's make this slightly more cinematic. Let's create, under cinematic, we've got one camera here, which is called a cine camera actor. I'm just going to bring that and drag it in. I'm just going to hit G on my keyboard just so I can see where that's actually placed that. You'll notice here that when I click on the camera, we get this like, little window pop up, and that's showing me what the camera can see. Okay, so it helps you if you're kind of moving this and framing your shot. I tend to not really like that. So you can do, I forget where that is, I think it's editor preferences. If you were to do camera preview, yeah, here we go, camera preview size. You can either turn it off, which means it won't, that will actually disappear. Sometimes it's still quite handy, so I'm just going to make it smaller. So I'm just going to make that 1, just so it's not invading my screen and stopping me from seeing what I want to do. I want to frame this now, but first, before I do that, what I'm going to do is, I mean, first and foremost, rename it. So this is going to be shot 002, 0. Okay, just so I've got a camera. That makes sense. And as I say, if I go back to kind of my plan, we've got this idle, and it's quite close in on him. So I'm just going to do that. So yeah, let's get that started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to sequencer first. So if I was to, I think I've got that as a separate window. There we go. So I'm just going to go to frame 0, 0, 0, and then add this. And you can see here that because I have the camera selected, when I add this sequencer, it's already at the top. Again, just makes it much easier. So this has made a few things. This has made what we refer to as a camera cut track. So this is this track here, which is essentially telling sequencer what camera to look through. If you want to, you could actually have multiple cameras within one sequence. I'm not going to do it that way. It's completely up to you how you choose to organize that, but I am going to keep it just really simple. I've got my shots, which are level sequences that I'm going to play in sequence. So here we are. So this one is, so again, that's all good. And now I've got this open. What I can do is if I was to click on this icon next to the camera, so shots, shot 2, I can click on that. And this is a really quick way of being able to look through that camera. Another way of doing this is if I was to click on this and right click, you can pilot it. What I have found is that sometimes that hasn't been working. It's a bit annoying. But that's one of the bugs I have found. One thing I'm going to do as well is just change this, instead of being my default viewport, to being a cinematic viewport. And what this does is it gives us kind of many more kind of options here of the length of the shot. I've got my playback options actually in this shot as well. So it's a representation of your framing, which you don't get with the standard viewport. So cool, I'm going to click on that, and I'm piloting this now. So I can get my shots. Sequences in the way at the moment, so I'm just going to minimize that. What could I do? Something I've just done by accident, I quite like, is perhaps we're looking at this and maybe the camera moves to reveal him. So yeah, I'm probably going to do that. But anyway, there's a few things that you'll notice here. One thing in particular is that he's completely out of focus. And we probably would want him to be in focus. So again, this has a lot to do with the type of lens that you use. If you come down here, I've got the camera selected, and I'm looking through all of the different elements here of the film back, the different lens types and things like that. You can use prime lenses. You know, you can really do some really cool stuff and get something very cinematic. I'll tell you what, I am going to use a 200. What this does, this is a really long lens, but you get, that's probably a bit too much. If I bring him into focus, so what you can do is you can just dial this in, and you can get the right distance. You can see I can get that. With a 200, the focal plane here, the actual focal depth is very narrow, so it actually doesn't look quite right. What I can do is turn this on just to see exactly what's in focus. And it's like a big plane that you can see there. Do I want the eye? I'd want the eye in focus. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that's quite cool. It's really shallow, and I didn't want to include so much of the background as well. So I am just going to put that down to maybe a 50 and just zoom that in. Yeah, something like that, just so I'm not getting too much haze and too much, but I'd like the lens flare that I'm getting. So cool, so I'm just going to draw that debug focus plane and just bring that. So this is just basically a huge plane that moves up and down the threshold of the camera. So I can just get that. You always want the eye to be in focus. There we are, that's quite cool. And there's my shot. So let's just have a look at that in sequencer. I'm just going to push play on this. So there he is, kind of moving. So that's shot 2. I could, if I want to, add a little bit of camera movement. So maybe by frame 100, this is where I'm going to be. And what I'm going to do is just add a keyframe here on the transform. And you see that come into the shot. And what I'm going to do is right at the top beginning here is I'm going to create a new keyframe. I'm also going to turn on auto key. And that's just so that now what I can do is just move the camera maybe slightly out so that I can't see him. So if I push, and this is why it's really handy to be able to just close that. Oops, I didn't want to close it, I wanted to minimize it. Let's go back into shot 2. Minimize that, because what I can do is just hit play here. And there we are, there's my camera move. It's pretty cool. So that's shot 2 kind of done. That's kind of what my plan was for it. So a few other things, just looking at the time, 15 minutes. You can see I didn't really get to that. But anyway, we'll get cracking on the next shot, which is going to have some full focuses in it, which was going to be quite interesting. So what I've got here, again, I've got a blank sequence. And I haven't got a camera in here or anything like that. So I'm just going to eject from this camera. And you can see that just at the top here. I can eject that camera. So I'm just looking through my perspective view. I can come over here. So this was going to be something like this, where I was going to look at this. This one would look better with a very shallow camera. Oh, sorry, a very long lens. So that we don't get all this perspective distortion. And the night's going to step in. So let's get that set up. So I'm just going to close shot 3 for now, and I'm going to hit G on the keyboard so I can see my stuff again. And I'm just going to go to create camera. Where's my camera? Sorry, cinematic. Camera actor. Just drag that in. And I can get that roughly where I want it to be. Cool. And as I say, we're actually going to start this one with adding the camera first. So again, adding camera actor 3. This one I'm actually going to rename. Shot. Let's go 030. And again, in this, I'm going to look through the camera. So that's the kind of shot I want, something like that. Actually, it looks quite good. What lens is on this? This is universal. Let's go with an 85. Cool. Just going to try and dock that. Okay, wasn't like I want to dock it. Cool. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too long on that. So again, just something kind of really flat. And you can see here that I've got this kind of nice framing of that. This one's going to, because there's a lot that happens here, he's going to turn around, he's going to be idle and stuff like that. I'm actually going to give myself a little bit longer in this shot. So instead of having only 150 frames, I'm going to bring that up to just go 250, so 265. And I'm just going to make that all the way to 250. There we are. So I've got a much longer shot now. So again, I've got, I haven't put him in focus yet. Let's make him in focus. There's a cool thing that they've added as well. That's quite useful. I can't keep closing. If I was to select the camera, you can actually pick your objects. If I was to click on that, and it makes sure that he's in focus, which is pretty cool. So as I say, now what I'm going to do is add the beast in, because he's just going to be doing his idle for a bit. So I'm just going to add him. Let's do so he's selected. There we are. So the animation, he's going to be doing an idle. And for the moment, I'm just going to make him doing the idle for the entire shot. And I will blend in a moment his other animation. But he's just going to be kind of just looking through there. One thing, if I've set up my framing and I don't want to change that accidentally by moving the camera, one thing you can do is that instead of looking through the camera, using the camera, if I deselect this camera icon, you can look through the camera cut track. So what you can do, if you click on that now, I can't actually move the camera anymore. I can't pan or can't zoom or anything like that. So it's a good way of now being able to safely work on everything else while still looking through this camera. Cool, so I don't actually have I need an animation of him turning around, and I also need an idle for the night. So I'm just going to go back to mixer mode. I'm just going to type in turn. Turn, not a quick turn. Okay, I'm just going to type in 180, just see if maybe that comes up. Cool. Okay, that'll do. Nice. Okay, so we're going to download that turn. Again, without skin, download. And that will download there. And the other one that I'll download now is a idle for the night. So again, I'm just going to type in idle. I think there's like a nice sword and shield idle. There we are, something like that. So again, it's currently on him, so I just need to make sure I change back to this character. Otherwise, I'm going to end up having an issue with the proportions of the character. One's massive and one's quite a bit smaller. If you're not careful, connect the wrong animation to the wrong character, it will work, but it will stretch out his arms and it won't look very pretty. So yeah, but we won't do that. Cool. So this one is for the sword and shield idol. Okay. So cool. So then what I'm going to do is I've got that. So let's add in to my content. I'm just going to minimize this. So he's in focus. And just going to go to the beast, and under his animations, I'm just going to make sure I add the right turn. Make sure that goes onto him and in vault. That's fine. And then onto the knight. I don't have any animations yet for the knight, so I'm going to go into a new folder. And it's just animations. And sword and shield idol. So I'm just going to drag and drop that in. Again, just making sure I connect that to the right one. Like that. So as I say, if I go back into my sequencer, I should see him in his idle. And what I want to happen is that he's going to blend into the turn. So I'm just going to, just under him, just going to minimize that. Add a new animation. So add an animation, it's going to be the right turn. And you notice it will add it where my cursor was in the timeline. So if I was to look at this, I'm just going to minimize that a bit so I can see both of these. So he's going to look at that. At the moment, we see the pop between one animation and the next. And what we can do is, if I was to make that overlap, we actually get an interpolation between the two. You can see here, at the moment, it's a kind of ease between the two, where it will just blend. I will just see him turn. Cool. And what will want to happen here is that after the turn, I want him to go back to the idle. So I'm just going to, again, add another animation of the idle. And just going to do that. So it's an interesting thing that's going to happen. So it's going to turn one way, and then the animation is going to make him turn back around. You can see that's a bit strange. So what I want to happen here is that I'm going to compensate for that just with the transform. So here and here, I'm just going to key the transform again. I'm just going to come out of this camera just so I can see what's happening here. And I presume, I'm just going to turn on snapping just so it makes it slightly easier to turn him exactly 90 degrees. Oh, sorry, 180. Let's see what happens. It might have turned him the wrong way. So what's happening is that that's happening, that's happening. He turns right. And it does a little shift, but at least he's still facing the right direction. Cool. So I'm going to look at that, see how that looks in the viewport. Again, I'm kind of roughly dialing in the timings. So he's now going to turn. It needs a little bit more, maybe enough in between here so that he doesn't go to overshoot and go back. I could, if I wanted to, also extend that ease that's happening. So there, and just about there. I'm just going to make sure that he's not turning. So just make there we are. So it goes to turn. So it turns. So make that, extend that a bit. I'd have to maybe tweak that a bit more. I think I've probably messed up the timing of that blend a bit too much. So let's go with like, yeah, it's not the smoothest transition between those two because of time. I could spend tons of time fixing that. Let's very quickly just get the knight in here now. So he needs to be facing this way. So full 180. And I'm going to add the knight to this and then add its animation. So over here, animation, there's the sword and shield idle. So I'm going to bring that to the beginning. Cool. So let's see how that looks through here. So currently at the beginning of the shot, you can't see him, but just so we're going to see him coming to the shot. So one thing I could do as well is maybe split my viewport. You've got lots of different layouts for your viewport. So I could do a split pane and then make that one my perspective, make this one my shot 3. It just means that now I can start moving stuff and kind of getting an idea. No, I don't want to just go back to the perspective. So again, this is one of the bugs I found. Cinematic viewport seem to be linked for some reason. Okay, now if I click on that, okay, that seems to, I don't know why this one is switching back. It's supposed to stay on that viewport. Fun, fun, fun. Anyway, let's just do that again. Let's go to cinematic viewport, shot 3. And then, yeah, so back to here. So playing through this, I just, at the beginning, just want to see the night come into the shot. So I'm just going to hit that at the beginning. And then what I'm going to do, and I can actually go into the transforms here and say on the location in whichever axis he's going in. I'm just going to, it's definitely not the Z axis. So there he's coming in, and then one thing you can do if you wanted to keyframe it, you just hit S and it will keyframe that. Cool. So he's now going to just come into the shot. It's going to looks like he slides into the shot. Maybe just in Z there. I'm just going to move that down ever so slightly. So he looks like he kind of like swoops into the shot. Just so it's not so linear. It's maybe a bit too much. There we are. Something like that. It's actually going up, maybe. Cool. So last thing I'll do here, which is now I've got that. Just going to hit S on that, so that's all keyed. Is just on the camera itself, I'm going to keyframe that pull focus. So he's going to start in focus, the beast. Once he sits in here, just going to pull this out so you can see the manual focal plane there. So I'm just going to key that. And then it's at this point when he turns, that is so about here, it's when we're going to bring a night into focus. So it's about there. Make sure I key that. Hold on that. And then as he turns, I'm just going to go there. And what I can do is actually select that keyframe, copy it, Control C, go to here, Control V, and paste that same keyframe. So now I've got a pull focus to the night, and then back to him there, although he does his little jittery dance there. So let's have a look at that shot. So again, I'm just going to keep that open. Let's go to the beginning. The night comes in, pull focus in, pull focus back. Cool. So the very last thing that I'll show you now is that I've created these two shots, and I'm just going to want to play them side by side. So what I can do, I'm just going to go to my where was it, in cinematics, and I've got this master sequence that I created. I'm just going to save all these. So I've created some stuff. So I've got this master sequence. So what I want to do now is create an edit of those two shots. So I'm just going to go to track, add, and we've got all these different track types. And the one I'm going to use is what's called a shot track. When I add that, I'll get a list of all the different shots that I've made. So I've only made two. So there's shots 20, shots 2, and then shot 3. So let's do that. So on top of that, I'm just going to give myself just 500 frames. I don't need that much. Okay. So, and then what I'm going to do is just here, add shot 3. And cool, there we are. So I can now see these two. And if I was to look through this, I'm just going to minimize it. So from the beginning, if I push play, I've got a nice camera move to reveal him. And then we cut to that. Again, this shot is a bit too long. It goes on for a bit. So what I could do, maybe 200 frames is too much. Instead of having to go back and change that, the cool thing about a master sequence is that this is essentially an edit. If I decide that this shot is too long, let's see how long it should be. If I was to play through that. So again, space bar. So pull focus, we see the turn, probably about there. And I can just trim it. If I can get that, there we are. So now that is ready. So from what I can do now is start working on the first shot, I can start adding in all the different animations and just start to string these together to make my final thing. The very last thing, and then we'll just have a couple of questions for 5 minutes, because I haven't seen any questions come in the Q&A, so it might be that all of this is making perfect sense. But just from here, I'm just going to fade to black. So I'm just going to show you kind of one other type of track here, and this is on the master sequence. And it's just called a fades track. Really kind of simple how this works. So from about here, I'm going to add in a keyframe, and after a few frames, it's going to set this to 1. And what that does is now over the course of the animation. So once we got that, after that, we'll just fade to black. Just like that. And that's it. As I say, I could start going through the other shots and adding the animations, and I'll just keep updating that. If I wanted to go back and change that awkward turn that he's got, I can just open up shot 2. No, sorry, it wasn't shot 2, it was shot 3. And kind of find, it wasn't on the camera, it was on him, and that second's turn. But for now, I'm just going to delete the idle, to be honest. And I'm just going to actually take out the right turn now. And I'll probably just start remaking that. And the cool thing about setting up in this kind of hierarchy is that I can start making changes. Maybe he doesn't turn around. You know, I can just make that change in this shot. If I save the shots, I can now come back to my master, and all those changes come up to this top level. So now he doesn't turn at all, although he seems to glitch out a bit. I think it's because of the keyframe that I've got. But if I push play, nice camera move. He still looks like he still goes to turn. But yeah, cool. Can you add easing to the animations? So just looking at the question there. So yeah, I mean, with everything that I've done here, you can go into the graph editor. So even if I want shot 3, if I look at just that little camera, that move that I put here at the beginning, which isn't ideal, I can select that transform track, and if I go to my curve editor, I could actually see that. I can go to the location, I can frame that, and I can see just at the beginning those changes to the animation that I made. We're talking at the moment about really large values, but I can go here. And with these, you know, you've got tangents. You can start changing these however you want. You've by default as well, if I was to right click on this, at the moment it's using auto tangents. I could set this to be linear. I could break it. I can make it a constant. You can flatten it. If you change it to weighted tangents, I've now got the option here to start kind of pulling that out and actually kind of messing with that quite a bit more. So yeah, you can start to interpolate the animation however you want. But again, it's very similar to how you would inside of Maya. So yeah, how to make the output of this? That's quite a good question. So the output, if I wanted to render this, what I could do is go to, I mean, actually, you've got this tool here, which is to render this movie. And this is the render movie settings, and this is one way of doing it. You could do it as an AVI, you could do it as an EXR sequence, PNG sequence, however you want to. This is depreciating. In future versions, it won't be used. It's just here at the moment because people are moving to Unreal Engine 5 from 4.26 and 4.27. I think that's now the movie render queue. Which, if I was to go to cinematics and it's a plugin that I'd have to turn on. I'll just show you what that is. So if I was just type in movie render queue, if I turn that on, it will need me to quickly restart it. I'll just save all of that. So yeah, so now I've turned that on. What you can do is you can go to cinematics. Here's my movie render queue. And what you can do is that you can add this sequence. And the cool thing about this is that it knows if there's shots inside the sequence because it understands the hierarchy. So if I wanted to render this entire thing, let's say, for example, I didn't want to re-render shot 30, I could actually turn that on and off. And it's kind of, if you've used Premiere and used like media encoder, it's a very similar kind of way of working. And every shot, you can actually have your own settings. So say, for example, if I wanted to output this at, I wanted to check just anti-alias settings. If I wanted to output at a higher resolution, so with this, you can go like 32K, 64K, however large you want to go. So yeah, so you find the settings there. For some of the outputs, those are just additional plugins as well. So if I was to just very quickly, so just look at the time, if I just did EXR image sequence, it says it's already there. Okay, usually you would see under settings here, when you add, you could see whether you do it as a EXR sequence. For some reason, those are not showing yet. Oh, okay. For some reason, oh, that makes sense. So because I was in a certain shot, if I go to the top level, which is obviously what I'm outputting, I'm going to see a kind of bigger list. So I can do XML, EXR sequence. I can choose different things. And these are all toggles that you can turn on and off as well. And then once you're ready to render, you can just click to accept and render. So you just hit that button. I'm not going to do it, otherwise it won't actually render it. Cool.